Hi everyone, and welcome to our first WCA webinar. Hopefully everyone can hear me and see our slideshow that we've got up. Just checking with our panelists, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me and see the slideshow? Awesome, thanks panelists. Welcome tonight. It's so exciting to finally be at our launch webinar. Obviously when Aish and I had this idea, probably in January or February of this year, I think we always envisaged this would be in person, but it's sort of been a blessing that we haven't been able to do it in person, because it means that we've been able to open up this to be even bigger and greater, which is a wonderful thing for us. It's a privilege for us to be here and to talk to you about this topic, something that all the panelists tonight are really passionate about, how we get more women into coaching sport. We'll just do a quick intro of Aish and I, and we'll come to our panelists in a minute. So I'll just change the slide. So my name's Jules Hay, and I'm one of the co-founders of WCA. And I'll just hand over to Aish to give herself a quick intro. You're on mute, Aish.
Hi everyone, I'm Aish Ravi and I'm also a co-founder of WCA. My background is I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, and also doing some research on in the women's coaching space.
And like Aish, I'm also from a background of phys ed teaching, and have currently transferred over to doing some research into women on coaching and thoroughly enjoying it. So just before we officially open our webinar, we'd like to do an acknowledgement to country.
So at WCA, we're all about respecting and celebrating the First Nations culture, and therefore we'd like to make an acknowledgement to the country. Our meeting is being held on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today. People are joining us from other areas held by Indigenous custodians, and we extend that same respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So just to give you a webinar overview, so firstly, we'll give you an introduction as to what the Women's Coaching Association is all about. We'll also give an insight as to some of the research about women who coach, what's currently out there, why women coaches matter, what we can do to support women who coach, and then we'll introduce our panellists, Penny Colour-Reid, who's representing Australian Rules Football, Suzanne Henderson, Hockey, and Courtney Hagan in Cricket. And then we'll finish our webinar today with a Q&A from the audience to the panelists.
So I'm just going to start by quoting myself. When I was preparing for this webinar, I thought the first few words I get to say as one of the founders of this organisation, I want to make sure that I say the right words. And so I thought to myself, I'm going to write it, and I know reading it's not the best, but I just wanted to make sure I could articulate it really clearly about how passionate we are about this topic. So when people ask me how to get more women in coaching, I often respond with that it's a really complex problem. And the lack of women coaches across sport in Australia, from community to high performance, is such a complex problem to solve. It's not just a matter of attracting more women into coaching roles to meet a ratio. It's about changing the culture of sport to be more inclusive and supportive to women as leaders. Australian culture still has very strong gender stereotypes threaded through every aspect of our daily lives. From the day we are born, we are told pink is for girls and blue is for boys. And why is this? As a society, we socially construct these gender roles. It's time for change, and we need to make space for women as leaders in sport and see the full potential and value they can bring when coaching. The Women's Coaching Association really wants to lead the way in creating this space, supporting women and valuing women as coaches. So who are we, and what are our values? And the best way that we thought we could do this today to make it very interactive, obviously because it is an online forum, is to get some of our great working party, and we've got about 20 volunteers who work with Aish and I in monthly meetings to support us with our ideas and building our aims and our vision, and to introduce them in this video to you, and to share our mission for the Women's Coaching Association and our values that sit behind it. Now, hopefully I've done everything right and this will work
properly. I'm Katie Dean.
I'm Courtney Hagan. I'm Ruth June.
Hi, I'm Eva Alma.
I'm Kerry O'Sullivan.
I'm Andrew.
I'm Suzanne.
Annabelle Redmond.
I'm Bree.
I'm Martin Dalton.
I'm Alex Roberts.
I'm Michelle Clark.
Hi, I'm Julia Hay.
Hi, I'm Aish.
Welcome to the Women's Coaching Association.
The Women's Coaching Association was established in 2020. The mission is to empower, support, and encourage women and girls to coach sport.
At WCA, we inspire to create social change by increasing the number of women coaching across all sports, from community to high performance.
Boys, and of course girls, need to see women leading sport as coaches. Our leaders in sport communicate who and what is relevant and valued.
At WCA, our call to action is to ask all sports to look at where are all the women coaches in sport.
At WCA, we pride ourselves on our values. Our first value is inclusiveness, where we provide a welcoming, collaborative and safe space for all to support women and girls who coach sport. Our second value is innovation. We create new ideas into valuable outcomes that increase the number of women coaching sport. Our third value is integrity. We work to advocate for gender equality in sport by behaving ethically, honestly and truthfully at all times. Our last value is one of the most important ones, and that is impact. We strive to make a difference by advocating for women coaches at all times in all sports.
Over to you, H.
Awesome. So just as I mentioned earlier, we're all about respecting and celebrating the First Nations culture, and that is why our logo is very much all about that. So just to give you a bit of insight as to the artwork, the fabulous artwork, the U shape in the logo represents people. The blues and the purples represent the saltwater country, and the circular dots represent all of us gathering in a meeting place, and the leaves symbolise growth. So this awesome artwork was by Shauna Hill, who's a proud Gubbi Gubbi woman, and we're very fortunate to have her illustrate this for us and have us use it as part of our association, representing our association.
So our three aims or objectives for the Women's Coaching Association are number one, to attract more women into coaching roles. Number two, to develop and to educate women who are coaches. And number three, to sustain the careers of women who coach. So we really want to be advocating for women coaches and to, in particular, for things like pay equality across sport for women coaches. We thought that it might be nice tonight to talk about where we'd like to head and some of the current projects that we've got underway with our working party. So some of the things to keep a lookout that are coming in 2021. We're working on a podcast series that all the recording will take place towards the end of this year so that we can release it in episodes next year. And through those podcasts, we'll be interviewing women who coach. And the idea, I guess, is to tap into our education piece and also attracting more women to coach, so that hopefully by listening to some of the stories of women that coach, that inspires more women to take the whistle up and to coach out on the field, and also of course for that role model piece to hear of other women's experiences in coaching. We're currently working on an advertising campaign to get more women into coaching, and that'll highlight some of the things that we talk about tonight, the great things about being a woman who coaches sport and what women can add and the value they can add to those sporting organisations and cultures. We've already released our social media streams. So if you're not already, follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn and Facebook. And we have a very targeted plan for those social media streams. And really that's all about creating a news stream and sharing positive news about women who coach. We've made a very deliberate decision not to share stories of women who participate in sport on those news streams. Because we feel like that there isn't many news streams or social media outlets that really concentrate on women who coach. So for us, that was really important to have our social media filled with women doing great things coaching in the coaching space. The other thing that's going to be a big part of our association is workshops such as this one. Of course, we'd love to run some face-to-face too. And also networking opportunities just to catch up with other women who coach from across all sports from community through to the high performance end. We also in the process of building an online library of coaching resources that would be pretty much free to our members and to access for women to help them plan sessions and to have the best resources available to make the most of that. We'd love to set up a mentor and a mentee program where we go out to our more experienced women who coach and pair them up with someone who might be new to the coaching profession that can work with them and buddy up with them and teach them through the journey of their coaching. And the other thing that we've already started doing is collaborating with like-minded organisations on projects that we really share the same outcomes of going back to our 3 aims of trying to attract more women to coach and develop them. We'll move over now to our probably what you've all come for essentially is to answer those couple of questions that we pitched at the start about why women coaches are important and what we can do to support them. As I mentioned at the start of this webinar, it's a really complex problem to solve. It's just not a matter of literally bumping up your ratios in your club. So we know from the research that is around, and there is, it's a bit of a niche area of research, but there is quite a bit of research that has been done in this area, that women are significantly underrepresented in most sports as coaches from the community to high performance levels. And even though participation in sport has increased for women and girls in Australia, and especially in sports that were male dominated, we haven't seen a huge increase in the amount of women coaching in those sports. So often I think one of the myths is, oh, there's more girls playing, there'll automatically be more women coaching. And we know from 40 years of data out of America that that's not necessarily true. But unless we have, really structured and implemented programs to encourage more women to coach, then we won't necessarily have these girls transferring over from a participation pathway into a coaching pathway. Often women are stereotyped to coach beginners, children, women or girls athletes and teams. Really consistent data across all our Western countries that women are often just, they'll coach the girls, they'll coach the beginners, they'll coach the female athletes. We sort of need to break this mold. Like women work, I come from a teaching background, we don't just teach girls, we teach the boys and the girls at school. I teach in a university setting, I teach males and females. So we really need to break down this stereotype that women can only coach girls and women and beginner teams. They face significantly higher barriers to entering coaching. So I think a lot of the time, a lot of women wouldn't see that as a pathway, perhaps from their playing days, because they haven't seen many women coaching, so it hasn't really even entered their mind. And I'm going to touch on some more barriers for women coaches in a few slides further in. We know from all the data around women in the professional world that is, and it's very similar in women in coaching, that they lack the confidence to apply for positions. So the old thing of the man meets 2 out of the 10 criteria, he thinks that he can apply, or he's got, feels like he'll get the job. The woman might meet 8 out of the 10 criteria and feels like she hasn't got those last 2, she's not going to apply. So we definitely need to do a little bit more perhaps to build up our women in our sporting clubs' confidence to take those coaching positions on. They also feel like they have to, when they do get into the coaching position, often women say and report back to researchers that they feel like they have to overstate or prove themselves just to belong in the sporting club. We've got one more page of some of the research about women in coaching. Just to note, we haven't included a lot of the quantitative data in these slides tonight because our 3 panelists from the sports are going to be giving you some figures on the women in coaching. And also, I really wanted to unpack with everyone some of the sociological challenges and barriers behind women who coach sport, because often that's really just perhaps left to the side when it is really important. Some of the other things the research tells us is that there's a lack of women role models and networking opportunities. Obviously, it's a bit like it's sort of a no-brainer. If we can offer more networking opportunities and have more women role models, then hopefully that's going to support and empower and encourage more women to coach. We know that women are involved because they are passionate about sport. This was really evident to me last year when I did a research project on Aussie Rules junior footy coaches, women who coached in that sport. And it was interesting because I thought perhaps that these women would coach because of the main reason they wanted to coach was to coach their children. And in the research, the answers that came back or the responses, just about every one of them said, I love footy. I've loved footy since I was a kid. I played it with my dad. I just want to be a part of it. So I think sometimes we can underestimate how much women actually love the sport and can have a really extensive background in the sport. One of the other things that we know from the research is that women have many transferable skills that they bring from either playing days, other sports if they're a cross coder, or their professional job. So we really need to tap into that and utilise those professional skills. They also feel excluded by the boys' club culture in sporting clubs. So things like gendered language. To give you an example of that, I was only out coaching yesterday, and I had a male coach of the opposition yelling constantly out on the field, man up, and we had actually girls playing out on the field. And whilst it might not seem like much, and I know I certainly came from a basketball coaching background where as a child I often heard those words and myself said them to as a young coach. You know, I think that we need to be a little bit more conscious about how that can exclude people and make people feel uncomfortable. So trying to stay away from that gendered language is really important with our women coaches. And of course we know that what tends to happen, that women, when they find the culture hard and exclusionary in sporting clubs, it's a lot easier just to leave, because often they're voluntary positions, and perhaps instead of trying to, you know, put up with being excluded week upon week, it's just easier to go, you know what, I'm not really interested, I'd rather just give up coaching. So these points that we've brought up tonight are all backed by evidence, and we've got some references at the end of the slideshow if you'd like some more information on that. And just, of course, we could run a whole webinar on the research. There's so much that could help us, but we're just giving you a little bit of a flavour tonight for what research is out there with regards to women in coaching.
Awesome. So thanks, Jules, for sharing a little bit of the research under, you know, why we're really wanting to establish this and try, I guess, help this space around increasing the number of women coaches. So this quote here by Nicole Lavoie really highlights why women coaches matter. As she says, sport is one of the most visible and powerful social institutions in the world. Individuals who are seen and known in the world of sports, like coaches, communicate who and what is relevant and valued and what is not. And the majority of the time in every country in the world, these coaches are men. So we really need to have more women in this space in order to change a lot of these, you know, societal practices, and, you know, have women more valued in society. So then, you know, our younger girls and boys can succeed. So again, women coaches matter because ultimately more respect for women as leaders in, you know, if we have more women coaches present, they'll have more respect for women as leaders in our society and sport. We'll also have more role models and leaders for everyone, especially children, boys and girls, and athletes who want to stay connected to their sport. Having more coaches also promotes inclusion and diversity in clubs, and it's also good for business. There's a lot of research out there that says that diverse workforces are better performing. It can also challenge gender stereotypes and make communities stronger and more connected to each other. So what can we do to support women who coach? Education. So we can educate people within our community, within our sports clubs, to better support women and also understand the importance as to why we need more women coaches. We can also provide job flexibility and job sharing. So understanding the demands that women have in society and being able to cater to that. So things like, you know, job sharing, team coaching are things that we can incorporate within our sports clubs. We can also adapt criteria to suit skills, knowledge and experience of women, and, you know, some of their strengths that suit some of their strengths. Consider women from other sports or professional experience. We can make our clubs more inclusive and family friendly, so then women feel comfortable to bring their children into the workplace, and also women that have kids aren't felt like they're not included in the environment for making that choice. We can also advertise and celebrate women across all our platforms, our social media, our websites, and make them visible. So then they feel that if they see themselves in those positions, they feel like they can actually achieve it and become a coach. We can also invite women personally, so tap them on the shoulder. So research shows that often women are less likely to put their hand up for a role, and telling them to do that is not a solution. So make sure that you invite them, you encourage them to get involved, and you support them in that role when you ask them to get involved. We can also avoid gendered language and stereotypical assumptions that women generally have in society. We can also provide women mentors and sponsors to support these women to succeed. It's not enough just to have women in these positions. We have to make sure that we support them to succeed and provide opportunities for them to do that. We can also utilise women and girls who are already involved at your club, so junior players, parents, encourage them to become involved within your club, within your school settings, so then they feel welcome and they have that opportunity to become involved with coaching and succeed. We can also provide development pathways that lead to opportunities for women to succeed. So perhaps make your coaching education platforms, those pathways more accessible, visible, and have more women within those environments, so then women feel supported and well equipped to succeed.
We'd now like to welcome our first guest speaker tonight, who's Penny Cooler-Reid. Penny is renowned in the Aussie rules circles as one of the 3 junior female players who took Football Victoria to VCAT because she was told she had to stop playing footy. The case was a landmark moment for sexual discrimination in Australian sport, effectively creating a pathway for girls and women in Australian rules football that previously did not exist. Penny continued to play football and was drafted to play for the Collingwood Football Club in the inaugural season of the AFLW. Upon retirement as a professional athlete, Penny took up the reins of coaching the VFLW Collingwood side. In her first year, she led the team to the minor premiership and took out the Coach of the Year award for the VFLW. In 2019, she coached the team to back-to-back minor premierships and finished the season winning the 2019 VFLW Grand Final. Penny's latest achievement is being a part of the new Australian Sports Museum exhibition, where she is a feature piece in the creation of AFLW. Penny is currently the senior coach of the Williamstown VFLW team and is a part of the working party for WCA. We welcome her here tonight to talk about women coaches in Australian rules football.
Jules, thanks so much for that introduction. Firstly, I just want to say how honoured and privileged I am to be a part of the Women's Coaching Association. I think it's fantastic what yourself and Aish have been able to put together and put to good use the 2020 lockdown. And I think that it's about time that women have a voice, especially in the coaching world. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Australian rules football and just some quick little data that was provided by the AFL. And as you can see here, we've only got one senior coach in the AFLW that is a female. And in the assistant roles, the clubs can have anywhere between 2 to 3 assistant coaching roles, which is approximately about 42 assistants. So we only have 10 of those, which are females. And same with the development coaches. Again, anywhere between 2 to 3 development coaches. So again, not too much representation on the female front, but I do believe that we are getting there. Same with the semi-elite or the state league level. There's only a handful of coaches in either the senior coaching role or the assistance role. And then we've got our pathways. So we've got a little bit of work to go in terms of the AFL and the females in the, I guess, the elite pathway. There's 4% of registered coaches across Victoria, and 4% of those are women and 9 nationally. So we're a little bit on the scarce end, but I do believe that that is going to get better. And as Aish and Jules have said before, if you can't see it, we can't be it. So the more representation that females have across the AFL world, I do believe we're going to get some more females coaching. Not so much, I guess, in terms of the elite level, but we will get there. And I believe that, you know, the WCA is a great platform for girls and women to start their journey in coaching. Just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about my coaching and my journey into coaching. So like Jules said, played for the Collingwood Football Club, and then on retirement, getting a little bit older, I still felt like I had a lot more to give back to the game. and was approached by, at the time, the coach of the Collingwood Football Club, AFLW, and the operations manager, and they offered me a coaching role within their VFL program. And I think for me, it was a no-brainer that this is where I wanted to be. I always knew that I wanted to give back to the sport. And I guess as a young kid, I always wanted to fight for women and girls to have the opportunity and option to choose what they wanted to do and where they wanted to go. And so for me, coaching at the Collingwood Football Club, I am a one-eyed Collingwood supporter. My blood is black and white, but I do understand that not everybody will like me, and that's okay. So yeah, took up the coaching role, the senior coach of the Collingwood Football Club in the first inaugural season, and I guess lucky enough to be Mitre Premiers and win Coach of the Year in my first year of coaching, which was for me an unreal situation and unknown and very humbling to, I guess, get the award. But at the same time, I knew that there was more out there. One of the things I really wanted to talk about was maybe some barriers that I faced as being a young female coach in a male-dominated world. A lot of things I had to do was multitask. I was working across multiple roles across the football club. And for me, that was okay because I was still a part of it. But working 7 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. 4 days a week probably wasn't a good balance for myself or my work-life balance, and burnt out quite quickly. One of the other things that I really realised that as I'm going through my journey as a female coach is some of the resources and support for female coaches is not as strong as it could be. And that's why I think the Women's Coaching Association is one of the best avenues and platforms that females can have. What we're trying to do here is, one, help with strategies to get more women coaching, not just for the women themselves, but also the workplaces, that we can help then use those workplaces and help, I guess, give them an avenue and an understanding as to why females bring such an advantage to their organisation. We're also looking at different ways to support females within the program. Again, working with Jules and Nation, the Working Party, we're going through lots of strategies and different ideas of how to continue to support women across the board. And one thing that Jules touched on was about the partnerships with the female coaching network that we have over in the UK. So it's not just about keeping it in-house in Australia, but looking out to our networks across the world and seeing how female coaches can continue to support each other and build a strong and supportive, but also I think it's really important for women to have a voice across leadership, not just in coaching. So they're just a couple of things that I feel as a female coach in the football world, and I would love to see more girls and women be a part of coaching. And I would suggest if anybody could start working your networks and get on board the Women's Coaching Association.
Great, thanks so much, Penny. It's awesome to have you on board and really appreciate you coming along tonight to have a chat to everyone. We'll move on to our second panelist tonight, and that's Suzanne Henderson. Suzanne has worked in sport for the past 25 years, from high performance through to community levels. In her current role at Hockey Victoria, she is passionate about creating opportunities for women and girls and has led the organisation to develop its first gender equity and diversity strategy. She's paved the way for young girls by establishing a girls' participation pathway starting from under 10s, and also implemented women's only coaching and umpiring accreditation courses. Suzanne is also a keen hockey player that has been involved in the sport since the age of 8. She is passionate about getting more women and girls actively participating in sport as board members, coaches, and officials. Suzanne is a General Manager of Strategic Projects at Hockey Victoria and is a part of the Working Party for WCA. We welcome her here tonight to talk about women coaches in hockey.
Thanks, Jules and Aish. Before I go to my particular slides, I just wanted to highlight, so Penny put some numbers up there, which everyone might be shocked at how small the coaching numbers are. I just want to reference first that, so hockey has been played by women since, I had a look up today, back in 1907, women started playing hockey in Melbourne. So it's been a sport available to all genders from way back. So we're talking 100 years ago. So when you look at some of the numbers tonight, or may also think they're very low, but there's a bit of a comparison. We're in a different stage of development of our sport for women, as opposed to sort of the AFL and even for when Courtney speaks about cricket. So that's just something to take into consideration when you start thinking about different sports. Where are they in their life cycle, and how long have they actually had women and girls participating, whether it be as players, let alone coaches or on their boards. So thanks again for the opportunity tonight to give you a bit of a snapshot, I guess, of what's happening in Victoria within coaching. So in the far right hand side, I want to actually sort of start with what our accreditation looks like. So this is something that's not unfamiliar to many sports, where you find that the numbers in the community level are much higher for women, but as they progress from their level 1 to advanced, the number of women in those programs really decreases. The other thing you need to take into consideration with hockey, these are actually only people who have done accreditation. There is a lot more people out there that are coaching that are not registered for anything, because hockey doesn't really have a registration for coaches. That's something in Victoria that we're going to introduce in 2021, mainly because we do not have the data on who actually is coaching out there in all our clubs. So that will be fantastic when we get that up and running, to actually run and find out who is actually coaching, and then we can actually target some education towards those participants. So again, we've got sort of from community level up to our high performance, we see that there's a decrease in the number of women involved in those programs. If I drop down a little bit further to our actual high performance numbers, we basically put 12 state teams in our national championships at the various ages, starting from our under 13s. And there's 24 coaching positions available in those programs. And as in 2019, we had 8 females involved, and 4 of them were head coaches. So that's about 33% of women coaching in our sort of high performance teams. We, as part of this gender equity and diversity strategy that Jules just mentioned, that I was involved in developing, what we've done now is we've incorporated that into next year's, what will be our new strategic plan. And there are KPIs attached to that across the organisation, which have coaches as one of the key areas. So, for instance, in the high performance area, we'll be looking towards trying to get 50% women involved in those coaching programs at the state team level. And we have to develop, obviously, strategies and people to help mentor them get there. But over that sort of 3-4 years, we hope to get to that 50-50 point in our state team coaching representation. If you look in the middle of the slide, you'll see something that says JSC. And that's what we call our junior state championships. And that's really for the age groups of under 13 and under 15 and under 18. We run championships for girls and boys, and there's normally 120 coaching positions we have to fill to be able to manage all those teams. There's 10 zones in Victoria, 6 metropolitan and 4 country. So a lot of coaches are required for these tournaments. In 2019, we had 56 male and 36 female coaches. You'll see that that doesn't actually add up to 120, because we couldn't actually even get all the number of coaches that are required for those roles. So that meant some teams only had 1 coach, as opposed to having 2 for every particular team in that group. 16 of them were females, were head coaches. So again, it's an area that we've started to work on over the last couple of years. How do we advertise? How do we recruit? How do we attract and make it so that, attractive to women, so that they will actually come and coach at that particular level in the sport. If I look over to further onto your left-hand side, we've got something there. It says 2019 casual high performance coaches. So in our particular sport, we have academies. So academies for our under 13, our under 15 and our under 18. to develop those academies, we normally have about 250 girls and 250 boys involved in each of those areas. We need to have coaches that are skilled enough to be able to work with those participants. From those academies, we pick the state teams. So it is a part of a pathway program. As you can see there, in 2019, we have 16 males and 22 females. So that's a positive sign for us. And what I must say is that these are areas of the workforce that we have control over, as in, when I say we, Hockey Victoria. So we appoint those coaches and we pay for those coaches, as opposed to the club sector, which we don't really have that much control over. One of the things that was pointed out before, Jules, when you were talking about it's important for female coaches to be coaching boys, part of that academy, that does actually happen. So there is crossover between, I guess, males coaching boys and girls and women coaching boys and girls. So it is one of those areas where the kids are actually getting coached by both, which is great. It's actually doing what we want to be able to do. And that's one area that I have pushed for within our organisation for those particular reasons that you've pointed out. This year, we had to make some changes, as I said, because our coaching courses previously have all been face-to-face courses. We decided to go online for the first time for our level 1. And you'll see in one of the courses that we ran, we had 16 females and 19 males. So it was quite good that we nearly got that 50% of women attending sort of that first time, that virtual type course. When I think about strategies going forward for our sport, I've got that sort of what's in the middle section of the slide here. So female coaching scholarships, we introduced those a few years ago, and that was really to try and develop some young women who wanted to be coaches and provide some mentoring, associate them as what we call apprentice coaches in our junior state championship teams. And that was really to try and help them and develop them. Part of the role was that they had to also coach a club. So they were actually getting sort of a lot more experience by being involved in these various areas. We also provided groups of women access to high performance training sessions run by our VIS women's head coach. And she was fantastic. The women would come along, they would watch the training sessions. She would introduce what she was going to do, how she was going to do it. And she would stay around for sort of questions and answers after those sessions. So another way, women met each other, they met the head coaches, they saw different drills, and they saw how everything was planned and communicated. So it was a really positive type of activity that we held for women that were interested. As part of the work that I've been involved in, we've introduced level 1 women's only coaching courses. And part of the reason for doing that was that we sort of interviewed a number of women to find out why they wouldn't be coaching or why they didn't attend courses. And it was identified that many felt quite intimidated when they went to the mixed their courses. They wouldn't ask questions, they didn't want to demonstrate in front of other men. So we trialled the women's only coaching courses a couple of years ago, and we've had great success with those. So we'll continue to work in that space and provide those opportunities for more and more women to be involved. I think I'm into the, the next slide. So what I'm presenting here is, this is what Hockey Victoria is looking to do starting from next year. So we've had pathways available for coaches, but they haven't been very well known, and they probably haven't been, women really haven't been subject to them. So we feel that if we actually develop these pathways and we promote them and we go and start working with the clubs, we can start looking at ways to promote women and these pathways going forward. So we've sort of got what we call a performance coaching pathway, as well as a club coaching pathway. Because as we know, there are people, whether it's males or females, that just might want to coach at their local level, and they're happy to do that. They just want to get better at what they do. And yet there's others that actually want to progress. They might want to make a career of it, or they just want to be able to coach at another level. So we've now just sort of put I guess, two sort of pathways which do meld into each other, so that they become, we'll publicise those, we'll promote those. We're going to start working with clubs about what they look like, how to get involved in them. So that's sort of what I guess we see as a future to try and attract and retain more women in the coaching pathway.
Great, thank you. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Finally, I just wanted to sort of talk about in relation to the WCA and why it's important. I really believe that it will enable us to have greater impact as a collective. And I think that's the important part, is quite often that sport works in silos. This is a perfect opportunity to collaborate across sports and share things. But I think that's the way we make a difference. We still can support each other, can support those who want to pursue a career as coaches, but at the same time, we can support those coaches who just want to be the best coaches they can be at a local level. So I think this association is a really good starting point for that. It's a way to come together from all different sectors, different levels of sport, universities, share knowledge, research, help each other, because I think together we can achieve more and have a greater impact on the sport for women.
Great, thank you so much. Sorry, Suzanne. It's really hard to tell on the webinar. You know, again, in person, usually the person comes and sits down. So thank you very much. Sorry, I interrupted you. We're now over to our third panelist of the night, Courtney Hagan. Courtney is a proud Bachelor and Gubby Gubby woman from Queensland. Court's been playing basketball and cricket since she was 8 in various competitions, whilst also coaching mini ball, Aussie hoops and representative levels for both sports. Professionally, Courtney has worked in the following areas: Indigenous liaison roles, university ambassador, coaching, sport and recreation team leader, and is currently working with Cricket Australia in the role of Indigenous engagement specialist. Court's passion is to create more opportunity for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders to engage in sport and to educate and support sporting organisations to be culturally safe and celebrate participants of First Nations culture. She's also the co-founder of a social media channel and podcast named Coming Out Black, which explores, celebrates and amplifies voices of the queer community who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. Courtney is part of the working party for WCA, and we welcome her here tonight to talk about women coaches in cricket. Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you. Sorry, I just took myself off mute. Huge intro there. And as Jules has just pointed out, I'm not the official person that works on coaching in Cricket Australia, but she's given me full permission to speak on her behalf. And her name is Dr. Eve Elmer, and she is also part of the Women's Coaching Association working party. So just a couple of figures here, and I want to preface this as well. Our numbers are quite a lot bigger. However, we're obviously a national sporting organisation in comparison to Hockey Victoria, and then obviously AFL is completely different. We have a lot of leagues, we have a lot of teams. Obviously, we have state cricket for both men and women, but we also have it for Indigenous men and women. We also have it for our inclusion competitions, so blind, deaf, and ID, both men and women as well. Plus community cricket, Premier Cricket, and then our national teams, our national leagues, WBBL and BBL, and Sheffield Shield. So there's a lot of teams to be coached. However, within that, only 14% of our coaches are female at the moment. So a whopping 86% of our coaches are male. So it's quite unclear though, however, because similar to hockey in some ways, there are coaches that are out there that aren't accredited. So we're not 100% sure if this is exactly our official number, but as we've gone on with more registrations as part of cricket, we're finding out those numbers. So the strategy here on the left is really focusing on the growing of cricket coaching for women in the coaching pool, so that Australian cricket can be the leading sport for women and girls in this perspective also. And that's off the back of a women's participation program, participation strategy, that is also being done, which will look at also educating our young female players to also take on coaching as part of their cricketing journey. So to break down some of these numbers here on my right, hopefully you can see it. So our intro and community level 1 coaching right now, we're looking at about 7,000, nearly 300 if we rounded out female coaches. At a representative level, we only have 130 in comparison to 2,487 for males, and then high performance, we have 41 in comparison to 559. So as you can see, there's quite a gap there for our level 2 coaches. And actually that's where Dr. Eve is actually at right now. She's taking part of a targeted female only representative level 2 coaching course. So she's there ensuring that we increase those numbers to get our keen coaches fully qualified and give them more opportunity. So there's been a lot of traction in the community space recently, but definitely more needs to be done in the pathway. But it's good to note here on that high performance level 3 that even though not a lot of those coaches are actively coaching, we actually have quite a number that also have the opportunity to that have had the opportunity to transition into leadership roles. So we have the executive general manager of community cricket at Sport Australia's Belinda Clark, who has that level 3. We have commentators like Mel Jones and Lisa Stalega, who work in our media, but are also on our national and state boards. So it's great that even though they're not actively coaching at the moment, they're having full opportunity to be leaders as women in the cricket space. Additionally, I think when it comes to barriers, there's nothing that Penny and Suzanne haven't mentioned that are also issues with cricket. We're constantly trying to break down that stereotype of pale, male and stale constantly, which takes a lot of time. But like hockey, females have been playing the game for a lot longer than some other sports in Australia. And due to that, I think we've had a lot more uptake early on with women's cricket. And I think we can all see the success of that in the last couple of years, particularly at the women's grand final, where we had 86,000 people attend in March this year. But with everything that we do, we apply an inclusion lens. So this being said, a lot of the things that we're trying to do is ensure that we create equity in coaching and opportunities for women and people that are non-binary, our Indigenous population, and also multicultural and disability in that space. I think there's not too much else to go, but also note that we have pilot programs that are constantly trying to target those demographics. And then, like at the moment, we're just really trying to focus on closing that L2 gap. And that's all from cricket.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Courtney. I hope everyone's enjoying receiving a little bit of insight as to the coaching landscape in these various sports. It's great to see so many people join us today. We've now got a few questions from our audience. So if you do have any questions, please keep them coming through. But I'll start with our first question that I'll be answering live. The question is, if we agree that structure drives behaviour, what are the possible structures that will drive growth in the behaviour of developing, appointing and supporting women coaches? And that question's from Martin Dalton, who plays a large part in driving that structural growth at universities. So we'll start off with you, Penny. If you could please answer that question, then we'll go to Suzanne and Courtney.
Yeah, nice question there, Dalton. Martin Dalton. I think from my point of view, like I'm only speaking on my experience as a coach within the AFL, which hasn't been too long. And I think I love the way that you talk about the structure to help drive. And I think that's one thing that we're sort of learning, because there isn't too much, or there hasn't been really too many female coaches in the AFL or the AFLW. We're still learning about what that structure is. And I think we're still learning about and having those conversations with those female coaches about what is the best practice and how do we continue to drive more females into the sport.
Awesome. Thanks, Penny. Suzanne?
I think when we're talking about structures, we need to think about the whole environment. So that's starting with our leaders in our national sporting organisations, state bodies, clubs, etc. So trying to set up the structures so that that diversity starts happening on the board. We've talked about state bodies here had to have the 40% women as a minimum on their boards as of last year to receive government funding. I think that the same thing needs to happen down at the club level, and that may help in looking at the environments that people are working within the clubs, because the role modelling starts and the decision making starts to happen. So there's more women on boards, and there is greater diversity, then we may look overall at greater participation of people in players, coaches, umpires, etc., because they'll be in environments that are far more inclusive and welcoming for them, and they can actually identify then what the pathways are, what are some of the barriers, how do we actually, I guess, facilitate better development for these people to be involved in the game and the sports they want to be involved in. Because at the moment, I think the decision makers are only thinking, as they keep saying, in many situations in sport, there have been male-dominated sports that have been developed by males for males. So we need to change the situation where we're making it far more inclusive so that those environments can change and enable everybody to be involved.
Great, thanks, Suzanne. Courtney?
Yeah, I think I'll definitely echo Penny and Suzanne's answers. And I think it's also about having a female or a non-binary person at every touch point of the game or of the sport. And that also comes at a national level and organisational level as well. I think obviously for us, for women, we've had to constantly fight our way into, get into a room. And sometimes I think it's also about empowering that person who's already in the room to open the door, give us a seat, or even give up their own seat, and also guide us to be successful in that way as well. Often I think people see female coaching or female participation as a female problem, but it's actually everyone's problem, that we all need to be a part of the solution. So it's empowering your male counterparts or creating male champions or any sort of champion that you can within your organisation to really do the hard work to change the structure, because that's the only way it's going to change.
Perfect. Thanks, Courtney. Now we've got a question from Marcella Hoffman, who says, I had a student that once told me that it doesn't help that a lot of women athletes don't choose women to coach them. He mentioned players such as Serena Williams that want to see equality in the sports but still hire men as their coach. How do you feel about this? And should professional women athletes carry that responsibility? So we'll start with you, Penny.
I think that in the individual sport, it's really up to the person and the player and what they're sort of used to, or what coach they can, I guess, get the best out of themselves. So I think it's a very interesting question. I'm always about, and it's funny how we talk about this, how do we get more women coaches, and should there be a quota for females within the sport? I think it's really important if there is a quota, and that there may not be a female that is as qualified as you want them to be, to at least give them the shot and have them be supported with people around them. So whether it is an individual sport or it is a female taking on a high level role, because that's what the association says, it needs to have a female in the role. I think it's great for the opportunity for that female, but as long as they are supported within that role, I think that's probably where we're at.
Perfect. Thanks, Penny. Suzanne?
I think it comes down to perceptions, and we see this at hockey in our state teams, and we might put a female in as the coach of the state team, and the parents will complain because they want a male. They see that one is far better. Regardless of whether they've actually seen that person coach, they've already made that decision in their mind that the male is better for their daughter, because their daughter's going to play for Australia. And that, for me, is about also this issue of experience, because there hasn't been enough women in the pool to provide them with experience at those levels to show that they can actually do this. So it's a chicken and egg situation. but what I do think is happening a little bit more is that there are some males out there that have identified some really good, talented female coaches, and they are supporting those women. And it's definitely happening within hockey, as in that they are saying, okay, I will be the coach, and I want you two to be the my assistant coaches for the first year, but next year I'm stepping back and you guys are going to take on, or say girls, are going to take on the role of the head coaches, and I'll sit back and support you. So changing those roles, because they're starting to see that there are really talented female coaches out there that just haven't been given that opportunity and the confidence. Because quite often many will come in in our level and say, oh, I don't know where to start. And yet, once they start working with somebody else, they know it. It's just the confidence to actually start the ball rolling. So I think that sort of, it's going to take some time, but I think the tide is starting to change in some areas.
Perfect. Thank you. And Courtney?
I get the lucky sort of answer, because you both absolutely smashed it. But it definitely is a combination of that messaging and opportunity. We've taken away decades of opportunity for women in sport in every sort of facet. So we've got a lot of undoing to do, but that also means that we've got a lot of hard work to, obviously catch up statistically, but we should know that, people are ahead at the moment, but that doesn't mean that it's a lack of skill or ability. It's also that, a lot of male coaches have fathers that were coaches and uncles and brothers, and they've all had mentorships. They have networks, they have the brotherhood, they have the old boys system that they've gone up through school or other parts of sport. We need a structure like that for women, most definitely, but that doesn't solve the problem right now. But I think it's definitely that messaging. I know growing up in representative sport, at a open women's level, we were given a coach that cost less, who was a woman and who was amazing anyway, but she had a lower level qualification on her experience, and the men got an ex-national coach who had his level 3 or whatever it was. So it was that kind of, your team doesn't really matter that much. I'm going to save some money by not doing this X and Y and Z, instead of the association maybe still giving us that coach, but then sponsoring her to get that next level, or working to get them actually interconnected and things like that. But like Suzanne was saying, I think it's all opportunity, and we definitely need to start providing a lot more on that space, but it's definitely that messaging as well.
Hey, Aish, can I
Awesome.
jump in and just add something? Often we know that the research says that a lot of, because we're talking about female athletes here, your initial question, a lot of the female athletes say they want the best coach. And this is the sort of problem, like you were talking, Suzanne, with the chicken and the egg scenario, that a lot of these women and girls have only ever had a man as a coach. So in their eyes, the best coach, of course, is a man. So it's trying to break down that around those stereotypes that, well, how do you know that the man's the best? What is a best coach? This is such a subjective thing. And at the minute, the best coach is the coach that's been the type of coach for the last 30 years. So we really need to think outside that notion of the best coach, and be a little bit more creative and a little bit more, I guess, perhaps objective, and have some set criteria that we'd like our coaches and our coaches' skills and knowledge to have.
Perfect. Thanks, Jules. And we'll finish off on one last question. It's great to see so many questions coming through. And what we will do, as we can't answer all of them today just due to webinar almost finishing, but we'll make sure all the panelists do answer your questions, and we'll send that out to you in an email. So if you have any questions, keep coming them through. We'll get them answered to you, answered and sent through to you, but just not tonight over this webinar panel. But to finish off with our last question, understanding this whole coaching problem is quite complex, and this is coming from Scott Nichols. I'm combining two questions here and coming from an anonymous attendee. What's the number one thing that community sporting clubs should do to encourage the next wave of women coaches? And, there's obviously an idea of that hockey do about deliberately appointing women. How can we get more clubs to appoint more women as coaches? So what's the number one thing that clubs can do, community clubs in particular? So Penny, we'll start off with you.
I was going to say, Jules, this might be a good one for you to answer to start with.
Oh, I was going to say, you go first so I can think about the answer.
I'm happy to go.
I'll give you my 2 cents worth. I think the culture, like it's got to come from culture. You know, you walk into a lot of sports clubs and the only things up on the walls of the clubhouse are the teams of the men's team, and these are clubs that have women's and girls participants. So I think until we change those cultures, you know, in our clubs and make them welcoming spaces, not just for women but for everyone, you know, then how, even if we get women in the door, they're going to leave because they're not going to feel welcomed. So for me, it's work on your culture. And obviously there's a load of literature out there and advice coming straight over from the workforce about culture and how to promote a safe, welcoming and inclusive culture in your sports club.
I was going to say that I'm currently working with the YJFL, the Yarra Junior Football League, as their female coaching ambassador. And I think that's a really good way to, I guess, one, have females represented as a coach, but also for me as a female coach to also work with the coaches that are coaching female teams. So that could be a strategy as well for other leagues out there to look at a female coaching ambassador.
I would say it's how you're going to be able to support them. So if you approach young women in the club and you want them to coach, they want to know how they'll be supported, what resources are going to be there, who's going to be able to help them, can they buddy up with somebody, because at the end of the day, it's a confidence issue. And if they haven't done it before, they need to know that there's going to be someone there, there's going to be a plan that is there as a tool that can show them what they need to do, and that someone might be around there to ask questions and help them in the first few training sessions to deal with that, and maybe how to deal with parents. So I think that's sort of it. It's sort of what's in it for them. You can sell them all the message about that, especially if they're young, how it's going to help them in their sport, to understand their sport better. Because we do find that when coaches do get involved, they do actually understand whatever game or whatever it is far better when they actually have to break down skills and show others how to do it. But it's about looking at that confidence issue and what tools and support around them will be there.
I'd also add, just like Suzanne was saying, it's not just giving them a go for the sake of giving them a go, or to seem like you're looking inclusive, or to make sure you get funding, because I think we can all read through that when we're getting given an opportunity because it has to be done, or because there's, you know, incentives or things like that. But if it's genuine connection and genuine support, you're going to see coaches flourish no matter what the gender. And I think a great word for that is empower. Just like Susan was saying, like it's building that support system. It's encouraging them to do, you know, the level 0s and level 1 coaching courses, which usually are free for most sports. It's providing them resources. Obviously, people can Google stuff, but if you already know what works, you can really cater that knowledge and insights that you already have to really upskill your coaches, and also be that, you know, take yourself on as a mentor for them, and be there for those questions, and you know, don't spoon feed, but give them, you know, opportunity and power to grow in that. And then also show them that there's a roadmap for them to also coach higher leagues, you know, coach for Australia, coach, you know, for the Olympics, whatever sport it is. It's got to be genuine and authentic. And when that's done, it's absolutely proven that there's a lot more success in that field. And then we've got role models for more young people to look up to then follow their path.
Great, thanks everybody. We're just going to wrap up now. Apologies, we're running a little bit over time. So we've got, I've just got to share my, screen, and I'll try to do it properly this time. Share screen. Right. Okay, so Aish, can you see that? Everyone can see the screen? Awesome. And I've made sure I've ticked the sound box. So we're just going to wrap up with where to from here, and then a little video to finish off with of our celebrating our women who in coaching. So essentially what we'll be looking at, I guess for 2021, we're hoping to establish a membership system, so where organisations can join WCA, and also an individual membership as well. So we're in the process of working all that out. Of course, more webinars and educational workshops, and we're hoping to have another webinar in a couple of weeks' time, and another free one, which is great because obviously it's we know cost can be a barrier to these things for women. So we will continue to try host free educational things, and then probably have a mix between that and some paid events too. We'd love to host some networking events. Obviously, it's a little bit easier to do once the restrictions come off. Most of us are based in Melbourne at the moment. However, we are getting representatives from the Working Party from most of the states. So hopefully we can host something in most of the states around Australia across 2021 and into the years ahead. As I said, we're definitely looking at that, releasing that podcast next year. Courtney, who's been on our panel tonight, will be in charge of that and having some great conversations with our women who coach. And of course, keep following us on the social media channels. Aish and I are working our way through that and trying to keep you regularly updated as to the news and things that are going on in the women's coaching space. Our email is here, and of course our website as well, if you did need to reach out. But we'll finish off now with a little video, and we say thank you to you for coming, and thank you to our panelists as well tonight. So thank you very much for coming along. Welcome to the Women's Coaching Association. We're all in this together, and together, hopefully we can make some change and make our sport better for everyone. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Thank you, panelists.
Thanks, everyone.